So these are the many Pixar movies that each and every one of us grew up watching and enjoying. Movies that, if you weren't already aware, exist and take place in the same exact universe. However, not everything that took place in that extremely fast timeline was good in any way. Which brings us immediately to today's video, explaining and ruining each of your childhoods the best I can. With theories about many of your favorite characters potentially being dead or having secret children that they potentially never even knew about. Like, some of the theories in this video that I'll be talking about are so complex that honestly it's changed everything I thought I knew about the Pixar world. And honestly, I don't think I'll ever look at many of these movies the same way ever again. And honestly, neither will you. So with that said, and without wasting too much time, let's just get right into it with the first theory. A Finding Nemo theory about Mr. Incredible potentially being a murderer. You see, this theory highlights how in Finding Nemo, we learned that Bruce had never met or known his dad, with it being revealed that his dad had been caught and killed by some unknown fisherman many years ago. Now it then points out that Finding Nemo itself is set in the year 2003, the same year as its release. Now it also claims that The Incredibles is set in the year 1963, based off of this newspaper article seen in this scene, meaning that the Incredibles family was around over 40 years ago. Now, as you're also most likely aware, Bruce is a fully grown great white shark with the assumed age of 40 to 45. Meaning he was of course born in 1958 to 1963, with his dad of course also existing around that same time period. Now we then move over to this scene where we see Mr. Incredible at his desk, where on the desk we can also see a picture of Mr. Incredible posing while holding a great white shark that he had caught while fishing. Now this picture itself is also in black and white, which would place the time of its taking around the 1950s, meaning it's entirely possible that the shark in this photograph is Bruce's own dad. However, it doesn't end there, as to further back up the claim that this is in the same universe and around the same timeline, we can also see this kid in the same Finding Nemo movie holding a prime Mr. Incredible's comic book, basically proving that Mr. Incredible existed in this world in some way many years ago. But now next up we have another theory about the Incredibles, and honestly this might just be my favorite Pixar theory of all time. So see, in The Incredibles, Jack has access to all sorts of powers. Laser eyes, duplication, flying, etc. You get the idea. He can do just about anything. Now in Incredibles 2, Jack uses one of these abilities to teleport away for a whole 2 minutes, with it never once being revealed where he actually went or what he did. However, what if I was to tell you that he didn't just teleport away in that moment, but instead dimension traveled to the world of Monsters Inc? Now I know that sounds completely insane, but hold up because there's actually a lot of sense behind it. For see, in Monsters Inc, there's a moment where Boo appears in front of all the monsters and causes extreme mayhem, with multiple monsters being interviewed shortly after about what had happened. Now in these interviews, we get told that a kid flew past one of the monsters and flipped the car with his laser vision. We then also hear from this yellow monster that as he was trying to escape, he was picked up and shook around by the kid's mind-controlling powers. Now again, I remind you, Boo's got no powers at all to speak of. And in fact, in the entire Pixar universe, only Jack possesses these sort of abilities. So again, for that 2-minute time period where he disappeared, he could very well have been in Monsters Inc. However, if that wasn't enough to prove the connection between both movies, in Monsters Inc. there's also this thing called the Scream Can, which is basically where they store kids' screams. Now in this scene, you can clearly see one of these cans resembling Jack, telling us that this can is potentially holding his screams from the time the monster showed up at his house and scared him. Again, basically meaning that both worlds are in the same universe and accessible by these doors, which would also make it accessible for somebody with Jack's potential powers. Like, do you see why this is my favorite on this list? It just makes so much sense and is extremely cool to think about. But now up next, we have a theory that claims Sid from Toy Story to actually be dead post the third movie. I know, some of these theories can actually get kinda dark. But now this theory all stems from the iconic Skull t-shirt, which isn't just seen in the first movie, but is also seen in the third movie, when he's all grown up and of course working as a bin man. Now here we can also briefly see that he has a fondness for music, when he uses the bins as drums while collecting them. Which may seem like an odd thing for me to point out, but trust me, it's important for the theory. You see, in the movie Coco that takes place many years later, we see all throughout it things relating back to Toy Story, with Buzz and Woody pinatas seen right here, and even the iconic Pizza Planet truck that is seen in all Toy Story movies appearing in this moment. Which again is very important to remember, as towards the end of this movie, during the music competition, we see loads of dead people taking the stage and performing, with one of them being a dead, music-loving performer in a black shirt with a white skull on it. Does that remind you of anyone? Exactly. This person right here is Sid from Toy Story 1 and 3. However, what's most disturbing about his death is just how young he would have been when it happened. Because as we know, in the first movie, Sid is of course around 11 years old. And with Coco taking place 22 years after that movie, he would have been around 33 years old by the time of his death, which is extremely young for anyone to die. Which just leaves me questioning how it might have happened. Because while he was a bit of a dick in that first movie, he never deserved to die so young, in my opinion. But now moving on, next we have a theory that claims Monstropolis never existed. And in fact, all the events that took place in the Monsters Inc. movie were all just a warped retelling of Boo's abduction, with Sully really just being a hairy freak who came in and kidnapped her late at night, while wearing a blue and purple t-shirt. For see, as we know, when she was taken, she was gone for a few days, and then returned likely telling her family about some hairy individual who came into her room scaring and taking her away. Which from a parent's perspective is likely the scariest thing that a child can tell you. Because while she likely replaced any and all memories of what had happened to her during that time with ones of colourful monsters and close friends, the parents know how ridiculous that really sounds. And how what really must have happened was likely so traumatic that she created all these fun, colourful monsters in order to help her deal with the horrors of that time. Meaning if this theory is correct, she was not only abducted in that moment but potentially abused at the same time. Now there's also some that have expanded on this theory and claimed that she may have developed Stockholm Syndrome for the creepy guy that kidnapped her, believing him to truly be her best friend, which may actually be a worse outcome for her to have if that was truly the case. However, either way, this theory is about the most twisted that I think I've ever read. And honestly, the person who came up with it really does need to be tested, because there's definitely something wrong with them. But now quickly moving away from that, next we have a theory that suggests the emotions from Inside Out are precursors to the monsters from Monsters Inc. You see, the theory suggests that the emotions in Riley's head as well as her imaginary friend Bing Bong are in fact a form of bacteria that over many years will evolve into sentient living beings, capable of not only taking over their host body, but potentially even leaving that body and forming their very own, while still of course looking like the imaginary creature that was created by their original host. Now the theory uses this to explain the many weird and crazy looking monsters in the Monsters Inc. And while I, just like many of you, were looking at this theory and claimed it to be absolute BS, I have learned while making this video that theoretically the theory isn't all that impossible. As in the real world, research has been discovered that some bacteria inside the human mind and body can play a role in someone's emotional and functional state, with some even theorizing the potential evolution of this having some lasting effects on the human body itself. Now sure, that doesn't mean humans are about to become monsters like Monsters Inc. However, something is likely to happen and we really can't say what that will be at this moment in time. So the emotions in Inside Out could very well be the beginnings of what become the monsters in Monsters Inc. But now to just keep things moving forward, next we have another theory from The Incredibles, and one that actually claims Syndrome to be Mr. Incredible's own secret love child. For see, this theory highlights how in the first movie, Syndrome was obsessed with Mr. Incredible, dressing like him, acting like him, and even creating extremely advanced scientific gadgets in order to get his attention. It then explains why he did this, and it wasn't just because he was a massive fanboy, but also because Mr. Incredible had some connection to his mother, potentially even being the dad that he never knew. For see, while the evidence for this is kinda weak, it is still one that isn't all that impossible, because it goes on to highlight Mr. Incredible's words to the police officer.
Take this one home and make sure his mom knows what he's been doing.
You see, here he says mom instead of parents, highlighting that he may already know who Syndrome's mother is, and that his dad is potentially absent from his life. Now it's then pointed out how Syndrome's advanced intelligence may also be potentially his superpower. And of course, as we already know, powers are inherited in the Incredibles world, meaning he'd have to have a super for a parent in order to gain this ability. Now this leads to two possible outcomes coming into play as far as this theory is concerned. One of Mr. Incredible basically just being his super dad and the reason behind him gaining his abilities. Or two, his mother was a super that Mr. Incredible knew extremely well prior to him meeting Elastigirl, potentially even having a relationship and a child with that person. Now both of these are again theoretically possible, however at this time they're just speculation. However, the theory does further back up its claim with Syndrome being his son by sharing the similarities that Syndrome has with the other Incredibles kids. With his hair being extremely similar to Jack's, his freckles being just like Dash's, and his eyes and head being almost identical to Mr. Incredibles himself. So could Syndrome be, or I guess was, Mr. Incredible's son before he died? Well again, you tell me your thoughts down below in the comments. Now to just move on to our final theory, next we have a theory that claims Andy's mother to be a murderer of monsters. For see, in Monsters Inc., Randall tells Sully that humans go around killing monsters and taking their skin to use as toilet seat covers. Which sounds completely insane until you remember this scene from the Toy Story spin-off, where we can actually clearly see a toilet seat cover resembling Sully's fur. Meaning that Sully post Monsters Inc. went into Andy's room to scare him, only to meet his mother who wasn't letting him get away. You see, the theory claims that she stabbed and killed Sully in this moment before then removing his skin and placing it on her toilet. Which they also claim is why Boo was never able to find Sully ever again, because in fact he's been dead in the Toy Story universe for quite some time. But now with that does it for this video explaining some of Pixar's craziest theories of all time. I really hope you all enjoyed and that your childhood wasn't completely ruined in the end. However, if it was, comment down below and I'll be sure to apologize in the replies. But for now, and with that said, I do hope you all have a great day or night wherever you are, and peace.